now let us discuss about that Bangladesh issue.
Okay.
That what that was our dream.
Yes.
We are usually saying that ek dhakka aur do Pakistan tod do.
Oh.
So this was actually fruitful in
Oh.
this war.
Oh.
So can you tell me about some pre-war situation of this war actually?
You see, if you go back, take your minds off to years 1969, 70, 71 period. You see, there was growing unrest in East Pakistan. There were a lot of atrocities committed by the Pakistani soldiers in East Pakistan. It's so much so, that time the political situation within the confines of the then East Pakistan were terrible. In the sense, ladies could not come out of their houses. No lady could afford to come out of her house. If she did, she would be abducted or raped, and her head was shaven off. On the head, they tattooed their names of the people who have raped this woman. Can you imagine? Even given a choice, the animals would behave better. Such was the condition. The local population was up in arms, but they were suffering. I visited Bangladesh. We could get refugees coming inside. I was that time a senior instructor at the Counter-Insurgency and Jungle Warfare School in Mizoram. And we suddenly got a message. Mrs. Indira Gandhi was arriving and she wanted to address the army officers. So we were assembled at one of the airfields. The Prime Minister was going to address the officers, and this was about middle of 1971, middle of 71, sometimes May, June, that period. And she told us that we have a difficult time ahead of us. You should all be prepared. She talked to us at that time. And then there was something called East Pakistan Rifles. They were regular army troops, Bengali troops, consisting of Pakistani Muslim Bengalis. Now these people revolted and they started coming into Indian territory. This was the situation along the border with the Pakistan that time. They came in large numbers. They came in with their families. They drove in with the vehicles they had in their unit, and they said, we want to surrender to India. Now such a situation, being the frontline troops there, they were stopped by our troops. You cannot come in just like that. So they were told that they wanted to surrender to India and want to settle down here. They were told that unless the confirmation comes from Delhi, they will not be permitted. But confirmation came in. They were allowed to come in. And they brought in all these sort of different stories of what atrocities were being done there. Now, then Sheikh Mujib appeared on the scene. He started motivating the people and getting the people to fight against these people. Now, in that situation, the one night, in the month of December, last week of November 71, an unprovoked attack by the Pakistan Air Force in the area of Punjab, somewhere they attacked. They thought that they would fly in the aircrafts. They tried to fly over Jamnagar in the Kutch area. They came in, but they were thrown out, chased out of the Indian territory. So then Indira Gandhi was attending some meeting in Calcutta. On that day she flew in and she said that she would address the nation, and that day the war was declared. War was declared. We were already there on the borders by that time. We had moved. My battalion had moved in from Nagaland, and we came into the area. But we had time to train ourselves. We arrived in the 3 months before this incident took place, before the declaration of war. But what do we do within those 3 months? We decided to train ourselves across the border. Training across the border means that you have to infiltrate inside the territory, pick up a target that you want to destroy, and get that target. In such a mission, we went in for 3 or 4 ambushes, major ambushes we carried out. This was to create a sense of confidence in the local population that the Indian Army units can effectively engage and destroy these many people. So we have gone into at least 4 operations before that. I remember, I'll describe one of the ambush. We went in, it was in the month of November 1971. We thought that, you see, there were 2 posts across the border, and whenever we tried to attack that post, Pakistanis used to rush in their reinforcements. A reinforcement consisted of artillery guns. They could not get our positions under their target area, so they had to move the guns forward and fire on us. So instead of faking it, we faked an attack on one of the border posts by firing very heavily on that post without committing troops on ground. And we got a message on the line. We tapped the line, Pakistani line, on telephone, and this message came. They said, "ये इंदिरा गांधी की बनिया फौज है, हम आके इनको सबक सिखाएगी." So we knew that they were coming in. After a while, we could hear the vehicles coming in. Heavy noise of vehicle coming in. We were all dug in. You see, Bangladesh roads are high, very high roads from the surrounding areas, because subsoil water level is high. So the roads are obviously at a higher level. And it is surprising that these vehicles, when they came in, they started rolling in, there was heavy amount of fog on the ground. And I remember I was in ambush, and another officer with me was Major Satish Nambiar. He is now a Lieutenant General retired. He stays in Noida, Delhi. And Satish and me, we had decided by a toss of coin, while deciding who will stop the enemy. You see, the enemy is coming on a road, so you have got to restrict that enemy's movement beyond a particular point, so that the entire enemy is within your reach. So we thought of there was a very prominent tree on ground, and it still exists. We went in last year, revisited Bangladesh. I spotted the tree again. I went to the site where we had an ambush. 43 years later, that tree is still there. So we saw that thing, and the enemy came in. They did not realize that we had a complete battalion surrounding them.
Okay.
And they started unloading their guns, ammunition from the trucks. It was making a lot of noise, but we could hear that. And at a given time, Satish Nambiar, I was told that I was to open fire and not allowing a vehicle to go beyond that particular tree. I could not see. I could hear the people talking, but I could not see anybody on ground because heavy fog was there, very heavy fog. So after some time, Satish Nambiar said, Ki Keshav, they are unloading trucks right in front of me and I can see them. I said, why don't you open fire? He took the machine gun in his hand and he fired on the truck which was right ahead of him. I have no explanation, but the fog lifted. God knows how that fog lifted. I have got no explanation whatsoever. But I could see the enemy as clearly as I could see perhaps all of you here. And we opened fire. 10 minutes of firing, we killed 136 people on ground. We mowed them down, 136. We destroyed all the 4 guns and we came back. We lost one officer there. He was from the Corps of Engineers, not my battalion officer. He was Major Vatsa from the Corps of Engineers. He got so excited by seeing this action. He had perhaps for the first time seen this sort of thing. He started running towards the guns, and I could see Vatsa running like that, and I picked up my gun and I tried to fire in front of his legs to create an impression that he was being fired upon and he should get back. My voice would not reach him. The battle noises were going around. But I could see Vatsa running. And there was a Pakistani chap lying on the ground. He picked up his gun and he fired on Major Vatsa. The bullet cut across his stomach like that. And I could see Vatsa just turning around there and falling down the ground. Now, I informed my commanding officer on radio. I said, this is what has happened. We had to evacuate him. Firing was still going on. But anyway, after about a couple of minutes, the firing stopped. I rushed my troops there. You know, it was such a pathetic sight. His intestines had come out of his stomach. All intestines coming out. And we got my stretcher bearer from there. I said, "Saab ko uthao, gaadi uske upar rakho." Now when we tried to lift him up, the intestines would come out. I remember having lifted the intestines in my own hand and I just put the intestine there. God alone knows what can be done. But that was the best thing that I could perhaps do. And I said, ले जाओ. He died in that thing. He couldn't have survived. But within those 10 minutes, we had destroyed 6 vehicles, blew up 6 mortars, and 136 men. 10 minutes of work, that's all. And we came back. That was one of major ambush during the pre-war days. War was not declared. We had infiltrated 35 kilometers on foot, and we wanted to get back 35 kilometers because of interference by air. You see, when the first light comes up, the air becomes active. So we thought the Pakistanis would bring in air, but they didn't. No air came through, and we came back. We came back 35 kilometers running back. All the way we ran back, and in those fields, I must inform you, there were leech infested fields. Have you heard of a leech in your life? Leech? No?
Yes.
Leech?
Yes.
Oh. But what do you say in Marathi?
Zaru.
Zaru. You see, I had 32 leeches on my body that night. 32 leeches in all sticking to my body anywhere, you can see. But this was a state of affairs. The thing is, but we have got something called anti-mosquito repellent. It is a deadly thing against a leech. You just put a drop of it, the leech will just melt away. But they were elephant leeches, you know, these big leeches. They suck the blood from your body. 32 leeches on my body that night. When we were digging trenches, they came up through the sugarcane fields. That was the thing. Oh, that was one pre-war ambush in Bangladesh. The war broke out on 3rd December 71, and we fought. We were told to capture Bakshiganj. There is a place called Bakshiganj on map.
You were there at Nagaland.
No. Who?
That means your army was there at Nagaland.
No. We were in Bangladesh that time. We had come into. You see, the whole brigade had moved in from Nagaland, and we came into a place called Tura in Meghalaya. Meghalaya, bordering East Pakistan. The whole brigade came in, but we had arrived 3 weeks ahead of the actual war. And what to do in the three weeks' time to get the better of the enemy, we thought, and we carried out these operations like that. So we carried out four such missions. We sank a boat ferry, we ambushed a Pakistani jeep with 6 people, we killed all the occupants, and we could not bring the jeep with us, but what we did was we brought the keys of the jeep and we shot everyone in that jeep, killed them, came back. So that was you see, just to create confidence that we were capable of doing this thing.
And demoralizing them.
Demoralizing them at the same time. So then we reached a place called Jamalpur in Bangladesh. Jamalpur was a major place occupied by 31 Baluch regiment. You will see there is on my one of the CDs, it is there. You see, we sent it. My CO was a gentleman called Colonel Brar by name now. He's retired as a Lieutenant General, stays in Bombay. Here. He's here in Bombay. So, Brar thought that he should send a letter to Pakistan Army commander. So, he brought that letter. He wrote a handwritten letter, and it was a point to find out how do we send this letter to the Pakistani garrison commander. One of the Mukti Bahini volunteers, who I am still in communication with, his name is Jarul Haq Munshi. This Jarul Haq Munshi said कि साहब हम जाके दे आएगा चिट्ठी. I got him a cycle. Village, next village we went in, we asked the villager to give us a cycle. Cycle was provided to this man. He cycled his way to the Pakistani commander post. Now they saw a villager coming. On a cycle he was flying a white flag. They beat him up. Frontline soldiers, what would they do? They would see somebody coming in unnoticed, sort of a thing, villager. They tried to say, कि कौन है तुम, किधर से आया? They questioned him. Since no answers were given, they gave him beating thoroughly. When he was about to collapse, one of their officers walked in, Pakistan Army officer. He says, "Iska talashi lo." They found that letter on him. It was addressed to garrison commander Jamalpur. My CO had written the letter. He had said, "My dear commander, I wish to inform you that your people have already surrendered to us earlier this morning." The letter, contents of the letter were, "My dear commander, you've been surrounded by all sides, and it is better that in the interest of safeguard of your men and their families, you better surrender to us. We will look after you." That's sort of, I'm giving in brief what the letter gist was there. He said he read that letter and he wrote a reply to us. I have got the reply of that letter. It's in my file there. Then he said, "I have observed that you enjoy tremendous amount of mastery over the language and you can express yourself very well. But I can assure you that we are at war, so let us not talk about these things. Let us fight." And he enclosed a bullet of a rifle in that envelope and sent it to us. At evening, I saw this fellow coming back around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and he was frantically ringing the bell on his cycle. I knew I cautioned my troops to hold fire and not to fire on this man because this is our man. I said, "Let him come in." We were keeping a close watch on the roadside. He came in. He was brought up to me and I asked him, "क्या हुआ?" कहता है, "साहब हमको बहुत मारा है." I said, और ये चिट्ठी का जवाब दिया है साहब ने, कर्नल साहब ने. And I felt the bullet in that. So I rang up my CO on my radio and I told him that the envelope contains a bullet and it conveys all the meaning. There is no need of reading the letter. But he said, "You send him to me." He was sent there. The letter was read by the CO. It was a brief letter. He said, "I can understand that you enjoy tremendous amount of mastery over the language. Let us fight the war." That sort of words to that effect. So instead of we attacking them, my COs decided that we must close up with the enemy. So we moved forward from where we were there, and we stopped ourselves there. Now that was the time which perhaps we did a very wise thing to stop ourselves there. Thereafter, Pakistanis thought that they would be able to brush us aside from the roadside. But in doing that, they hit their head against a thick wall, because not realizing the capabilities of the infantry battalion on ground. It has got a tremendous amount of punch to hit them hard. So we got round them, and at that night we killed 15 officers, 335 men of the Baluch regiment, one night of firing. We could not imagine ourselves the amount of fire that was exchanged, and believe me, because we had infiltrated, and while crossing Brahmaputra, we had shed our ammunition there, because we could not carry that much ammunition on our own self. Vehicles could not cross Brahmaputra river. So we had decided to leave our ammunition there. We had ammunition just as much we could carry on self. With that limitation, we went into the war, and at that night when this firing took place, the result was very encouraging. So, morning hours, the chaps started shouting in front of us position. It was still dark, about 3 o'clock in the morning. He said, "Idhar koi officer hai, hum surrender होना मांगता है." I said, this could be a ploy. You see, one has to be careful that they say when they want to surrender, they could still come up to you and shoot you down. I said, I had a chap called Pandit Barge as my senior subedar of my company. He said, "Sahib, तुम्ही तिकडे जाऊ नका, तुम्हाला गोळी घालतील." I said, "You shut up." I said, "Nothing doing. When I am calling this chap up, let him come." I told that man, जब हम आपको आने को बोलते हैं, आप हाथ उठा के ऊपर, हथियार हाथ में ऊपर रख चाहिए. And when I tell you to drop your weapon, you must drop it. If you don't, you will be shot dead. That is the only thing I can tell you. And I collected 75 Pakistani troops who wanted to surrender to us. They were in a badly shaken case. They had suffered severe injuries. And I landed them up. Everyone, my Jawan, 2 Jawans should go up. When we heard the weapon was dropped, my Jawans went and tied up their hands at the back, brought them and made them sit down there. And we collected 75 Pakistanis in front of my company, defenses. And by morning time when the light came up, we could see a spectacle of battlefield. You know, you can see the dead bodies on ground. You can see the people dying there. But, you know, you can open your mouth up and down like that. But you can't expect an upper jaw going this way, the lower jaw coming this side. See, such scenes I've seen. The tremendous amount of agony that a man suffers, a human being suffers after receiving a bullet in their body, was the thing I was seeing there. It was a terrible sight, but it could happen to us also. It could have happened to us also. We were fortunate; it didn't happen to us. But this is what we literally saw in our own with our own eyes on ground. Tremendous. Some of the people had, before dying, perhaps their wives' photographs, etc. They had clenched it in the teeth, and the chap was dead with a photograph in his mouth.
They were all Pakistani soldiers.
Yes, 31 Baluch regiment, and they were all dead. Can you imagine? 335 men of the battalion were killed, and we had captured 15 officers alive.
And that major was there?
No, the commanding officer had escaped. He avoided my company also. I got him in Dhaka later on. I met him in Dhaka, positively, Colonel Sultan Ahmed, Sitare Jurrat. He was a decorated chap, but by the Pakistani army decorated him. He was a deserving soldier, though. He was a man with guts. You have got to admit that. But they suffered a loss because they I would always maintain one thing. An army can sustain itself and a Jawan can keep on fighting. But if your morale is low, moral character is still lower, you cease to be an army. You cannot fight. If your morale is down your boots, how can you fight? There is no question of your fighting at all.
So Pakistani army was well equipped, but because of their low morale, they were defeated.
Low morale, lower moral character.
Okay.
These are the factors. Otherwise, if you see a Baluch regiment chap and compare with a Maratha soldier, Maratha soldiers are tiny fellows.
Okay.
They are not very high, tall chaps, but they are guts. Marathas have got tremendous amount of guts. They're good fighters. And you have got to be with your troops, identify yourself with the troops you command. And that's how you gain everything.
Okay, now here one more question.
Ah.
You are there from Maratha Light Infantry.
Yes.
So I want to get exact meaning. What is meaning of light infantry here?
Oh, yes, I'll tell you. You see, light infantry is a term which came in from the British Army. Light infantry signifies that your equipment is lighter, your movements are faster. Now, other infantries, for instance, they march 80 steps to a minute while walking.
Okay.
Light infantry walks 140 steps a minute. That's a major difference. Second difference is in the drill movements. Our drill movements are faster. You see, in a regular infantry battalion, all instructions and orders are executed from a position of attention. Light infantry, all movements are from the stand at ease position. Stand at ease.
Okay.
You are standing at ease. Attention is both the feet are joined together like that. But stand at ease, your legs are apart.
Okay.
But when your legs are apart, you are given instructions. But in other infantry units, your legs are joined together and then you carry out the command. This is the slight difference between the two. Otherwise, weapon-wise, everything is same. There is no change in that.
So at time of that war,
Yeah,
Maratha Light Infantry was consisting of only Marathas or it was cosmopolitan?
it was cosmopolitan.
Okay.
It was a cosmopolitan unit. We had people from other castes and communities with us, but still the majority, you can call majority of the troops in my battalion were from Marathas. Ratnagiri and Konkan area, these areas were mainly our people. Okay. came in from.
Okay. Then just one more question
Ah.
from the Pakistani soldiers side.
Uh-huh.
That whether Pakistani army was belonging to only Western Pakistani army or it was comprising of Eastern Pakistani army also.
No, there were very few soldiers from the East Pakistan, Bengali Muslim officers, and West Pakistani officers were there. Majority of West Pakistani, less number were Bangladesh people. But they were still owing their allegiance to West Pakistan. There were some people like that. And Sheikh Mujib was later on, when he was killed, I was commanding the parade in Delhi when Mrs. Indira Gandhi takes the salute at Red Fort on 15th August 15th August 84. I commanded the parade. That day, Mrs. Indira Gandhi had one very great thing in her, she would always dress up very well. She would perhaps, she had many people to advise her, but she always was prim and proper in her dressing up and appearing before the parade, etc. But that day when she came on parade, she was wearing a long sleeved blouse and taken a pallu over her head. And I said that if I have to carry the Prime Minister like this in front of the troops, the morale would go down their boots. I said, I must request the Prime Minister to walk deliberately with me and talk to one or two Jawans in each of the contingents. How to do that? You see, you can't talk to the Prime Minister of the country. But I thought the best thing was, after reporting the parade to her, with my sword in my hand, and she was walking here, and I was walking this way, and without looking at her, with the sword in my hand like this, and Mrs. Gandhi was walking here, I requested her, I said, Madam Prime Minister, I have got a small request. And she should have not turned her head towards me. She could have also put her head straight in front, but she turned her head towards me. She asked me, what is it? My God, that let me down. Because, you see, you are not supposed to talk to the Prime Minister at all. You are not supposed to talk to her. But since she had asked me, I said, may I request you, Madam Prime Minister, to talk to one or two Jawans in every contingent. We have got Army, Air Force, Navy, Delhi Police. So you talk to one or two Jawans in every contingent and say hello to them, that's all. The morale would go sky high. And she again turned her head towards me and she said, thank you, Colonel. And I came back. Parade finished. My Chief of Army Staff, General Raina, was sitting on the ramparts there. It is customary that after the parade, you are introduced to the Chief of the arm you belong to. So I belong to the army, so I was introduced to the Chief of Army Staff, General Raina. When I was introduced to him, he said, good parade, Colonel, but tell me, what was the need to talk to the Prime Minister? I said, this man, how did he know about that I talked to the Prime Minister? I was surprised. But since he had asked me this question, I volunteered to tell him. I said, sir, she was looking quite morose and I told her to cheer up. He said, some people in my rank and service haven't got the guts to ask the Prime Minister. I said, "Okay." That's how it turned out.
Sir, can you tell something about Mukti Vahini?
Oh, yes. You see, Mukti Bahini, they belong to, they're all motivated students, motivated college going children from various families in Bangladesh. They're highly motivated chaps, but no guts. But they wanted to join us. Army, instructions came that we could take their help. Now, for a regular army, it was a problem. How to take help from these fellows? They are ill-trained people. They are not at all trained. But it was not to discourage them, not to discourage these young boys. That's why we took these people up. But they knew the land well. That is where we took the advantage of that thing, to obtain information from them as to places, names, how to get to that place, what are the shortcuts available, if any, local help, local conversation with the local Bengali people. In these areas, we could take their assistance.
Can you speak Bengali language?
No, I can understand every bit of Bengali, but I can't speak. I can't speak. So the thing is, if two Bengalis are speaking, I can verbatim translate what they are speaking, but I can't. I don't speak that language.
So what way we were communicating there?
No, we were talking to them in Hindi.
Okay.
Hindi. They could talk to him. And with our troops, we always would talk in Marathi. So that is how the things are there. Thereafter, we went, after 43 years, we revisited Bangladesh last year. And you see, when we went into the war, we were 20 officers. And it was my brainwave which motivated me to get in touch with this fellow, Jarul Haq Munshi. You see, I never knew. I met him about 43 years ago. And one day I get a message that one Lieutenant General from Noida, Delhi, he rang me up. He said, "Yeah, I'm going to Bangladesh and I know that you have got some photographs with you. I want to take those photographs with me." So I had my CD with me. I sent a copy of that CD to him. And I said, "Since you're going to meet Mukti Bahini people, why don't you meet so-and-so man, this Jarul Haq Munshi, who carried our letter to the Pakistani garrison commander. If he is alive, I would not know, but if he is alive, I would like you to find out." He came back after 15 days, 10 days, and he rang me up. He said, not only that, he said, he gave me his telephone number. So I got his telephone number right now with me. But I talked to him. He said, "साहब आप लोग बहुत याद आते हैं हमको." I said कि हम आएंगे बांग्लादेश, मैं आ रहा हूँ. So that's how a thought came to my mind to revisit Bangladesh, revisit the battle sites where we had fought some memorable battles of our lifetime. You see, going over to a battlefield area is an experience, and see for yourself how we fought, and it's a great thing for a soldier, infantry soldier, to revisit the battle sites where he had spent very anxious moments of his lifetime while in service is a great thing, achievement. So, out of 20 officers, 4 were no more. So that left with 16 officers. I contacted all 16 of them. And believe me, except for my commanding officer, General Brar, who stays in Bombay here, and if you recollect, he was the one who led the Indian Army into Golden Temple. You know, General Bulbul Brar is his name. Now, Brar has got restrictions. He cannot move out of India. He stays in Bombay here, very heavily guarded, because the Sikh militants are after him, because they attacked Golden Temple. He was the commander that time. So, except for him, all 15 officers said, we are keen to come. I said, fantastic, very nice thing for 15 officers to go. So we tried to contact people around. We contacted Indian military advisor in Dhaka, and he said, yes, you're most welcome. We planned our visit, and believe me, we went after 43 years. We only paid for our airfare from our respective places, like Bombay, Delhi, wherever we were there, these 15 officers, 14 officers, to Dhaka and back. The rest of the thing, government of Bangladesh looked after us very well. But ultimately, we only 5 officers could go out of 15 because of age-related problems, doctors advised something this way or that way, some family problems. So the thing is, ultimately 5 of us went. And we went all over the places where we fought. And we came back after that. That's all.
Sir, can you tell about the Dhaka conquering, that incident?
You see, Dhaka, you know, we had reached a place called Tongi. Tongi is a river short of Dhaka. When we arrived at the Tongi bridge was very heavily marked. And I must tell you about one more thing, that when Indian Army went in, it was outnumbered. It outnumbered the Pakistani forces. But when an army moves, army doesn't move in short numbers, you know, and small vehicles. They got large vehicles, large equipment. For a division moving along a road, you require adequate road space. Bangladesh roads are narrow, and the subsoil water level is very high. So our vehicles got stuck. So these heavy formations coming from west, east, north, south, east, west, and south, there was nobody going there, but west, northeast, and northwest. So many troops came in, large formations, and they could not cross. We were on foot, very light movement, lightly equipped. We could reach Dhaka on 16th, the other formations were stuck. And when we got there, the general who was accompanying us, Gandharv Nagra by name, he said he caught one Pakistani officer there, coming early hours in the morning. And early hours in the morning when he came there, he said, "Where is Abdullah Niazi?" He said, "He's having his breakfast." Early hours of the morning. He said, "Go and tell him that Gandharv Nagra from India is here." They were contemporaries in the Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. Niazi and Gandharv Nagra. Both course mate in the academy there, Dehradun. When he saw him coming into his headquarters, He embraced him like that. After so many years, opposing commanders, and embraced him, and you see, removed his belt with a pistol and gave it to him. That was the real surrender. You see, army surrender takes place like that, that you remove your belt and then the pistol hanging with that is handed over. That is the surrender. That was the real surrender. This General Arora accepting the surrender, signing on the thing, was a thing which stage managed later on. I was present for both the ceremonies, both the events. But that was the initial surrender by Niazi to Gandharv Nagra was the first surrender. That was the thing.
Okay. How many soldiers totally in this battle from Bangladesh or that eastern Pakistan, how many soldiers were captured? Pakistani soldiers?
Pakistanis, we captured them, the entire formations. They surrendered to us. There was 52,000 troops surrendered to us in Dhaka.
Okay.
52,000.
Way our army treated them. What was the way our army treated them?
Our army treated them in terms of Geneva Convention. We were given very specific orders by Sir Manekshaw, and he said that no atrocities. Only thing is we look after them well, and they got back to their countries later on, whatever the government decides, because army is no one to decide about their future. We don't decide anything about that.
Okay.
We were treating them in terms of Geneva Convention. I was referring to that event. Now, I will tell you about the soldiers we captured, officers we captured, and I was detailed with 5 Jawans from the Indian Army to take them to Delhi's Tihar jail. Can you imagine to carry 69 officers of the Pakistan Army with just 5 men escort with me, armed escort with me in an aircraft from Dhaka to Delhi was a task by itself. And I said how to carry these fellows. I had a thought, and I got the local police officers from there, Dhaka, and I asked them, requested them to give me 70 pairs of handcuffs. I demanded that. I said, I will not go without this. And I handcuffed all these 70 officers to their seats. One brigadier, Pakistan Army, senior officer, he said, as per Geneva Convention, you are not supposed to handcuff us. I said, I agree. But I said, I regret that during the flight you will follow my convention and nothing else. I hope I have made myself clear. I told that brigadier. Because, you see, there is, as against 70 people, 5 people can be anytime hijacked and the aircraft can be taken away. I first objected because these 70 officers belong to Martial Law Administration, Zone B in Dhaka. They were accused of raiding Dhaka University Girls' Hostel. Luckiest girls were those who jumped out from their rooms and died. They were the luckiest girls. Unlucky girls, even in their with arms and legs broken, they were raped. Their heads were shaven off. Can you ever imagine such people existing on this God's green earth? But these are the atrocities we have witnessed. So I said, nothing doing. I said, you will follow my convention during flight. So I handcuffed them brought them to Delhi, and the Air India people who flew the flight, they brought air hostesses with them, 5 air hostesses. I said, what was the need of bringing air hostesses here? So I requested the pilot, I said, please tell these air hostesses not to appear in the cabin at all. Just stay in their own cabin inside, and during flight they will not come out, because these brutes that I am carrying with me are not worth a second look either. So these should be taken care of. And fortunately, the pilot behaved himself, and he said, nothing going, take it. That was the thing.
That means I can say here that from our side, we taken utmost care of these Pakistanis.
Yes, we did.
In spite of what they carried out.
Oh, yes, yes. That is what the Indian Army is known for that. Indian Army is known for that. You know, the question is, you cannot stoop down to that level ever in your lifetime. At least people belonging to good families in India would never think of doing such things.
Right.
Would never think of imagining going down to such low levels. So that is what the thing is.
Okay. Now this is all war. In Sanskrit, one phrase is there, Yuddhasya Katha Ramya. So that was actually some sort of terror is also there. But what is your advice to young generation of India, particularly I am talking of Maharashtra?
You see, Indian Army youth, the Indian youth must be adventurous. We find that Indian youth, at least I find, youth in Maharashtra are not at all interested, either not interested, and even if they are interested, they lack what you call the willpower to take calculated risks. And army is a place where one has to take calculated risks. One has to be prepared for these things every time. You have got to lead from the front, always lead from the front. That is the thing that Indian Army believes in. And we find that today, even in regular army, today I find the people, young officers, want cushy jobs, not the field job. You have got no right to come to a cushy job unless you have served in field. You have got to face the bullets. You have got to face the realities on ground. But you see, unfortunately, I would say, the trend is otherwise. They want cushy jobs, more payment. Believe me, when I joined the army, my pay was, as a recruit I joined, my pay, first pay I got was 39 rupees. I started from that. And I rose to become a colonel in the army, and that's a great achievement for me. Although my promotion to brigadier had come through, but because of certain reasons, I had to leave the army, much against my wishes. But army has been my first love, always.
Okay, so can you tell some of the methods that youth can join this army?
Yes, they must. They must. When I prepared myself, I was, in those days, I'm talking of 1949-50 era. Now I'm touching my 80th year of my life. But today I find that people are not at all, they do not participate in games, they don't keep themselves healthy. These are the things, you have got to exert. I was picked up by the Air Force in 1949, and I was later on withdrawn from the Air Force because my parents never wanted me to join Air Force. couple of years later, my son asked me one day, "Ki Papa, I want to join Air Force." My wife was a little bit worried about it. I said, by all means, if you want to go ahead, go ahead. And today is the Air Commodore. It's Air Force.
Okay.
Uh,
Fantastic. So you are still continue to serve the army?
yes, very much so.
Right.